Okay. So this lesson is going to be on conducting passive recon. And so conducting passive recon, that's gathering background information, prepare background findings for next steps. This is a really important step in a pen test, especially like, all areas of a pen test require some kind of information gathering or open source intelligence gathering. But the one area that's really especially important to you is for doing social engineering, doing spearfishing attacks and that kind of stuff. Then you need to collect emails and information on people internal to the company. So this is really important there, but used throughout your pen test, but usually at the beginning of the pen test. And if you're doing like a black box pen test where you have limited information, then this becomes even more important. I did a pen test over Christmas break, and the only thing I knew about the company was their name. So I had to use their domain names and look up network blocks and their different domain names to do the external penetration test. So that's where this stuff becomes pretty important. And for anyone that can't see the screen, you can actually use Zoom. You can connect with Zoom. Okay. And according to the slide, information gathering, the process of identifying, discovering, and obtaining information that may have relevance to the pen test, covers a variety of tasks, goals, and outcomes, crucial to the success of most pen tests, provides tester with potentially actionable items. Data may shape specific attacks or prompt rethinking an overall strategy. Attacking target without gathering info will lead to issues achieving objectives, can lead to outright failure. Not all gathered info will be useful. Hard to predict what will be relevant. You'll need to identify what data is and is not useful in the test. One of the things that would be useful if you're doing an external network penetration test and you go out and collect intel on the type of systems they're running. So if you find out that they're running Windows or Unix or Linux servers, then this kind of helps you better focus your attack, as well as what type of web servers or application servers that they're running. Sites like Netcraft are pretty helpful. You can go out and Netcraft and you can find out like the server, the type, the uptime, and even like the web server and OS that's running on it. OSINT, open source intelligence gathering. I'm sure a lot of you guys are hearing this as a pretty popular term and very popular area these days. But open source intelligence gathering, actionable information that can be gathered from freely and publicly available sources, not something that can be done, not something that can be kept private. Anyone can, these are items that can't be kept private. Anyone can obtain this info without breaking laws. Valuable to preliminary pen test phase. Skilled attackers want to be as discreet as possible. Example sources, who is registration information. So you can go out there and look at the domain name, and a lot of times the domain names for their sites, you can hide the contact information, but a lot of times it'll have like the technical contact, administrative contact, and so you can get like emails and email addresses and telephone numbers from that a lot of cases. Let's see, target the organization's public site, additional related sites, social media profiles of organization and people, public job postings, Google search and results, online news, articles, etc., and info gathered from DNS, mail records, and SSL and TLS certificates. Kind of like Tinker was saying the other night, you can go out there to someone's LinkedIn page and you find someone that's like a system administrator for a company, and a lot of times people's LinkedIn profile, they'll tell what type of systems they're administering. If you're a DBA, maybe you're using Microsoft SQL and you tell what version you have experience with. So an attacker can get that information and have a better idea on how to attack your systems. That's why a lot of times people, I don't do this myself, but it's a good practice. A lot of people will list their current employer as undisclosed, so that way they don't know who you work for to keep you from being targeted. And if you have really detailed information on your systems, then it's a good idea to hide some of that. But yeah, they can go to people's LinkedIn profiles, look online for job openings and see what's required. They're looking for a DBA. It'll tell what database they're running and what version of that kind of stuff. So you can get a lot of information that way. And here's an example like from a who is search. It shows the registrant contact, and they kept this pretty generic here. A lot of times I have the person's name. Sometimes that's kind of smart on their part just to put a generic name, because that can change too within your company. Your name records, someone leaves, then you got to go in and update that all the time. So if you have a generic email account that forwards to your administrator, then you're not having to change that. But then if you're personally setting up a domain name, it's good to go ahead and pay that extra money to get the privacy set to that. That way they don't give your email, your name, or your phone number is not disclosed. And this is the organization's website. Marketing sites have potential to be OSINT. Most sites have an about page, reveals purpose, goals, nature of organization. Even without this page, such info is usually on the site somewhere else, may reveal key information about organization that is useful to pen tests. Marketing sites provide the following useful info: executive or high-level profile, personnel, upcoming events, forms to fill out for more info, user forums, additional contact information, and links to social media profiles. Sites can also be storefronts, informational, etc. Depends on the organization you're targeting. Don't expect to learn everything there is from one site. And some of these, and from doing your OSINT too, you can find out if they have offices in other locations. The pen test that I did recently, from doing some of my OSINT, doing my recon, I was able to gather that they had, the different countries that they had systems in. And even from using like Shodan, it's like the hacker's browser, is you can search on vulnerabilities and stuff. And from Shodan, I could find out that they had like an FTP server in Indonesia, because they were due to a certain banner with their company name and their FTP banner. I was able to find that in Shodan and find one of the targets. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known about.
You can search for a company name and show that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you can search, and what happened was the FTP server, that banner was on that server, and I found that FTP server. Otherwise, network blocks or any of that stuff, I didn't find it. But, because they didn't give us any information, it was a black box test, but I was able to find the FTP server through Shodan. And here's an example of organization's website. So you can see like newsroom. So they have like a link on there to different news articles, press releases, board of directors. So you can find out who the board of directors are, executive staff. And this is like how, like Tinker said, sometimes people that are executives have more privilege than they need. So sometimes these are good people to target for spear phishing.
Yeah.
See, other sites can contribute to your OSINT gathering. Secondary sites meant to be specific purpose, like business-to-business operations, subdomains, or primary site, like admin portals, sites owned, operated by partners and organizations, sites that target subsidiaries or parent organization. Social media profiles used extensively by target. May provide details beyond primary site. Partner site might reveal info about relationships with the target. Example, 2014 breach of target enabled through a third-party HVAC supplier. And let's see here, shows. Okay, this is the courseware website, but I'm not sure what they're trying to tell us there. Okay, and social media. Most organizations have some presence on social media, so this is very popular, a really inexpensive way for companies to advertise. So you will see companies out there on social media used as marketing channel to reach certain audiences in novel ways, can reveal more about the organization than its primary site. Sometimes whoever's running social media may reveal or say things that they shouldn't really be saying. Hey. Also, rich source of info on individuals. Everyone from executives to rank and file employees have a presence. maybe linked to the main company of a profile, have separate profiles for personal versus professional life, can reveal interest, habits, behavior, relationships, etc. Examples of useful sites: Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and Reddit. And a lot of times when people are doing social engineering, LinkedIn is one of the big sites that, you know, you'll set up a fake profile and go out there and try to connect with people within the organization. And, you know, if you got a little bit of time, then you can start trying to, you know, they message the individuals and try to get a conversation. And then, you know, if someone looks through LinkedIn and sees someone, they may just assume they work for the company and, you know, reveal things they shouldn't. I actually had someone contact me recently on LinkedIn that was a fellow ethical hacker and claims he works for US Bank. And I looked through our company directory and I couldn't find him anywhere. So I don't know that he really does. It'll be interesting to see next if he tries to get information or not. Because I looked up in the directory, he's in the UK, but I couldn't find any listing of him. And we've got a global directory, so we should be able to find.
Sure, there was an internal fish.
That's a possibility too. They've
Well,
done.
I know my company always does a constantly doing just to train employees.
Yeah, that's a good point. They're good on the email phishing, but they haven't done that. Maybe that's something that could be something they're possibly doing too. But just kind of interesting to watch that stuff. I mean, because you get from doing that yourself. Yes.
So can the company fish for your external media, right?
They could, yeah. Well, like a lot of companies nowadays will ask to see your social media before they hire you and stuff. But yeah, they could.
But
Yeah. But yeah, they could. That's something I haven't heard anyone do, but I'm sure that's one area that's. Have they done that at your company? They fished outside of email, that they use social media?
Meaning they asked you to see your.
No, like you were talking about how someone could use it to fish you. That some companies.
Yeah, they do phishing campaign, and if you fail it,
Yeah.
they know who you are, and then they send you to training.
Do they do anything outside of email or?
It's hard to tell.
Yeah, I was just curious.
There is, because I've never failed it.
Yeah.
Kind of got one up on them, but you would think they would by now.
You think someone? That's something I hadn't heard of, but that's be interesting to. I'll ask around. That'd be interesting to see, because that would be a good place to test people, just in case, you know. Because I mean, LinkedIn is pretty important. I mean, you know, Twitter not so much, but LinkedIn, you know, there's all sorts of information there, and so yeah, that would be interesting to see. And job posts, we'll just kind of mention a while ago, personal structure, technical environments. So this is one area that people are going to get technical information. Employee needs to entice and provide enough info to prospective applicants, amount and type of information. Yeah, so basically here the people are able to find out personnel information or the type of programming languages and infrastructure that's being used by the company. And they can get some of that from LinkedIn, as we mentioned. And it just kind of shows you an example of a job board and some of the details of the position. And Google hacking, this is a really good one. I mean, this is good for just doing your basic research on stuff, but you can search inside of files and reports and find do Untitled, look for, you can even find like comments within a web page. So if you're doing like a web application pen test, you can look within some of the comments through Google and using Google hacking. It's also referred to as Google Dorks. And offensive security also means the exploit database. They've got like a list of Google hacks on there. There used to be like a separate site, and the person quit maintaining it. And the nice thing about offensive security, they've been good about taking over sites that are useful like that. Just like Exploit DB used to be like Millworm, and Exploit DB was taken over by offensive security, and they've kept it up to date. So here you can use, they have some different examples of what you're looking for, like site operator specific site. So you can see the site, CompTIA, and then you're looking for report. That's one I like to use a lot too if you're searching for something in particular on that site. And then links. So this is the CompTIA.org, that link. And so you can see the file type, PDF, Untitled. for URLs, NURL, and so
I've
forth.
used that several times to get upgrade files from my sister router to the next up iOS.
Uh-huh.
Since I don't really have a login.
Oh, okay.
I don't pay them $2,000
Ah.
a month.
That's a good idea.
You can find out exactly what the file name is.
Uh-huh.
And then you can do like NUR FTP.
Yeah.
In filing, so you find somebody's FTP server that has that. It works.
That's a pretty smart way of doing that. Okay. And let's see, True Power or Google hacking comes in combining operations. Here's an example. We see site, CompTIA.org is a site. The file type, so you're looking for a PDF or you're looking for a Microsoft Docs file. And then you look in title certificate report. So this is the particular report that you're looking for, and you're looking in those file formats. Enables to focus on a certain exact info you're looking for. Yeah, it's amazing some of the stuff you can find that people may have on a web server that's not protected. It's there, but they think maybe it's not indexed, that you won't be able to find it. So there's sometimes they got information on there that they shouldn't have facing the internet.
College courses, you can find like all the Cisco switch college classes. It might be from 3 semesters back, but it's on the campus.
Online articles and news can provide insight into targeting organizations. Larger businesses are featured in mainstream news outlets. News might report on new major services. Financial publications may focus on fiscal performances. News may report on unethical practices. Some of these things too you can find from some of these news articles or maybe press releases. If you can find out about a company that they recently acquired, and this other company may be a smaller, less secure company, so that may be a target for you to try to use to get into that company. So that's one way you can use this information too. Say example, PR and acquisitions that affect people, products, and technology. These are some of the things you could use too. If the company's acquiring a smaller company, you could act like someone from IT or security from the organization that's acquiring them to form a spearfishing attack to try to get information from people there internally. Won't always reveal things you need, but should be used in conjunction with other OSINT. Helps fill in bigger picture. Here you kind of see an example of a news article. And DNS is another good place to look. You can get like MS records, which is your mail records, name server records, text records. So, using DNS, you can find some other servers that may not be listed. You can find some different DNS servers that you can try to attack. You can do zone transfers sometimes. Here's like a example DNS record, which that doesn't look not quite what NS lookup does, but. And email, one of the most useful elements is contact information, the main point of contact for most organizations, often vector for soliciting info, conducting social engineering. Email addresses are commonly used as account names, so you get access, maybe you can log into a system, but most companies will give you a different email address than your account to log in to the systems with. Enumerating email-based DNS records also useful. MX records identify which servers handle incoming mail. Compromising servers may mean compromising lines of communication. SPF validates incoming mail from a domain is incoming from a trusted IP address. Mitigates email spoofing, spam, phishing, etc. Presence of SPF may prompt you to adjust your tactics. So this maybe prevents you from trying to spoof emails when you're trying to spearfish someone. Someone brought up a good tool out there, DNS Dumpster, that works pretty good for passive DNS. Actually, I used that one. I used on one of my last pen tests, outside pen tests. Also, I used Spiderfoot, which I hadn't used before. That's pretty good for reconnaissance. Okay. TLS and certificates. Search used in SSL and TLS can inform your pen test actions. So yeah, you can go in there and find information about that certificate. SANS can identify specific subdomains in certificate files, can also identify other domain IP addresses, email addresses, alleviate need to purchase or use multiple certs, can provide with new targets. Some certs use a wildcard to denote all subdomains, can make it harder to identify specific subdomains. CT framework publishes certificate authority issuer logs, contains info about domains, subdomains that certs apply to. You can discover subdomains covered by the cert in the past. Example, organizations have SANS, but now use wildcards. And here's another example of what here's a certificates. The certificates right there. And you can see how some of these are set to subdomains where they got the asterisks, which it would go to any subdomain. And then they have actually some specific subdomains listed there as well. In Shodan, this is what we were mentioning earlier a while ago, a search engine that enables anyone to connect to public or properly secure devices, allows remote access to the internet. Example, Zoo sets up an IP camera for everyone to watch the animals. Shodan indexes the connections and allows anyone to search for it. Does this by banner grabbing through ports that found the IPS FTP server, or found the name in the banner. Most devices are improperly secured or not secured at all, exposes them to a wider world. User may not even be aware. Example, IP camera has default credentials and is connected to the internet. So you can go on Shodan a lot of times and you'll see a lot of default credentials on their webcams that are not protected. So someone's out there doing a Shodan search, and so you can go through there and they have a list of, you may have like your security camera at home. You want to make sure it's, because if it's actually in your house, then someone can connect to it and view inside your house, or someone's, potentially wanted to rob you or something. And this is kind of a little far-fetched that, they would be able to see like maybe your external cameras and see if anyone's home, kind of monitor around the area. Although it's kind of funny, I don't know if anyone has seen this, but Whiskey Neon from Dallas Hackers Association has a picture where he had took a picture of himself, a selfie from a webcam, like an IP camera somewhere. He was at a hotel or something. And he was able to somehow get the camera from it, get like a picture from that IP camera.
What's the legal ramifications of that? That's something somebody's put on the internet.
Legally, that's
hacking, or is that considered just logging into the zoo's webcam?
I couldn't say for sure about that. I mean, it's out there and you're connected. It's open connection. I guess in some cases, I would think it would could be considered hacking, but I really can't honestly answer that. But it's interesting. You can see default credentials and stuff for routers and stuff too. I've seen on there. You can, and a lot of times, any of the latest vulnerabilities come out, you can see a listing. You can go through there and they'll have listings of different vulnerabilities and stuff. So you can find the default credentials for routers and switches, home Wi-Fi routers. And when you have like a lot of the home routers that people are using for their internet service, when they have the default credentials on them, you'll see a lot of where people are going out looking for those once those vulnerabilities are released out there. Yeah. Yeah, technically that way, but yeah. Let's see. Can also index ICS, traffic lights, and many more. So some of these industrial controls people can see. A lot of the IoT devices. There were like a bunch of IoT devices back in like 2016 that were like come from China, and the default credentials were hard coded into it. It wasn't even just like a password that could be changed. It was hard coded in some of these IoT devices. So some people can get these IoT devices for the internet. Can be useful on a pen test numerous ways. live feed of office premises to inform a physical test. Example, finding accessible HV controls. And as the more we get Internet of Things and home automation and stuff like that, the more crucial it is to make sure stuff is secure, and there's more things that could be out there on the internet and discovered with Shodan.
Something about hacking smart TVs.
Yeah, I'm sure there's something out for
I
that.
can't figure out why they want to. What TV stations do that?
Unless, I don't know.
Cameras on the front of some of them.
Yeah, that would be it. So if you're like,
So Samsung had a TV that was hacked. With some software in it. The camera pointing out.
in the harvester, this is another tool. This is like a Python script that you can gather subdomain information, employee information, email addresses. You can search through like Google, Bing, and also like LinkedIn and Twitter. This one's really good for like spearfishing, collecting email addresses. I've had to use that before on social engineering for, phishing campaigns to go through and collect information. Because a lot of times when people want you to do phishing campaigns or social engineering, they don't always give you a user list, because if they wanted to get it done and quick, they would give you a list of users for you to go through and test. But sometimes companies also want to see how much information is leaking, what you can actually get. So this pen test was one of those where they were trying to see what was actually leaking externally, and see what IP address, what information was getting out there, like usernames and email addresses and stuff. And it also can leverage Shodan for service banners. And it's just like a Python script. It's there by default on Kali Linux. First exposure to it was in 2012 when I started taking the OSCP course, and it was one of the tools that we used in there for gathering email addresses for phishing. And here's what a screen looks like right there. And so you can see how the domain they're targeting is comptia.org. And one of the sources that they're using LinkedIn to pull the information from. So you can use like LinkedIn, Google, Bing, or Twitter to pull the information that you collect there. Recon Ng is another command line tool for open source intelligence gathering. Similar to the Harvester, but more robust. There's a lot of APIs written for it for other tools as well. It includes dozens of modules. Each module runs a specific type of query. You can set options for each query. Example modules, who is, like what you do for internet, you can do this through this tool. And some of these tools can bind different things, so you're not having to go through online and do who is search. You're able to do multiple things through like one tool like this. Email addresses, PGP key search, social media profiles, and file crawler, and DNS record enumerator. And Maltego is another one of these tools. This one comes installed on Kali Linux as well. It's a graphical tool for gathering information. And this one kind of builds like a little map. So you're searching on a certain company, you'll see where it's got like IP addresses or different domain names, and builds this little map that you can kind of give you a visual of how the organization, the different parts interconnect. And let's see, like I mentioned, this graphic has a graphical interface, helps visualize OSINT relationships, including transforms and the automatically query, example transforms, transform enumerations, people, company names, numbers, network blocks, email addresses, external links, DNS records, subdomains, downloadable files, social media profiles. Query results are a node graph with links between nodes. Example, running transform of domain. Domain is placed in the top of a tree hierarchy, several branching links to the resource under domain. Example, subdomains. Source addresses, oriented transform show contact in the branch info in the branches, more than just arc, circular, block, organic, etc. Proprietary software with several additions. Tego CE is free. Requires registration to access to subset form. This is installed by default on Kali Linux. And here shows how the graphical interface looks. You can see the domain name, and then you can see some of the servers that are connected to it. And this goes down showing the individual IPs for some of those servers.
Notice a lot of these programs say they have multiple versions, et cetera. Is there a real need to buy or get the higher end versions, or is it?
From what I've seen, you have it. You can get enough from the different tools. And then, like, for instance, I don't know if they mentioned that here or not, but Spiderfoot's another one that's really good, and it's free. And actually, before you'd have to install it on your system locally. And while I was doing the pen test back in December, they came out with a cloud version, so you could go online and run it from there. But I think you can get enough from. I really don't. Any of the pen testers I know, I don't really know anyone that's paying for anything out like if you're after Thanksgiving, they have a special where for $5 you can get lifetime access to it.
I spoke to a Rapid 7 sales lady once, and she said a lot of professional testers who were by themselves, they get the full version of Metasploit for the 30-day or 60-day demo thing, and then they just do that 6 times a year.
That makes sense. Kind of like other software.
But Metasploit is the professional is expensive. But the crazy thing about it is it's kind of funny how a lot of the consulting companies don't get the expensive tools. Because when I worked at Verizon and AT&T, we didn't have the professional versions of Metasploit. And a lot of these companies internally will buy, these expensive exploitation tools, but the consulting companies don't. Well, I'm glad I learned that way, because if you get the really nice high-end tools, the things that are so automated, you miss a lot from it. We have Metasploit Professional at work, but I still use Metasploit Framework because it's all command line. Some of the professional versions, you go into like a web GUI to run it. And to me, it's not as convenient, a little bit easier to run sometimes from doing things from the command line. And here's another tool. FOCA stands for fingerprinting organizations with collected archives. A GUI OSINT tool that discovers metadata that may be hidden within documents. And it says documents typically downloaded from the web can work with a variety of documents like Office, OpenOffice, etc. Can work with PDFs, some graphical designs, types like SVGs. Use search engines like Google to identify files. You can provide your own local files, extract useful metadata like names, software OS version, printer info, plain text, passwords. And here we got a screenshot of FOCA. Functionality has expanded to include general OSINT queries like DNS and IP addresses. Has a plugin architecture to extend functionality. Runs on Windows only. It's kind of interesting. A lot of the hacking tools with Kali Linux getting popular, and all those tutorials and books using Kali Linux. A lot of people have gotten away from using Windows to pen test, and it's still helpful, especially with PowerShell being so popular, and most of your targets inside of a business are usually Windows. I mean, you got some Linux, but it's typically more likely Windows, especially like on the client side. And guidelines on gathering background information. Understand that not all gathered will be useful. Understand the difference between OSINT and closed source intelligence. Recognize sources provide OSINT and which do not. Perform whois queries to obtain registration info. Examine organization's main site for personal and business info. Look at related sites, corroborate or expand on your OSINT. Look over social media profiles for revealing info. Search job boards for personal issues or technology info. Conduct Google hacking to run advanced queries on websites. Examine news articles to stay up to date on targets' business operations. Okay. Query DNS to obtain domains and subdomains, info and additional network info. Leverage improperly configured servers for zone transfers. Identify email addresses that can be used as account logins. Identify domains that use MX and SPF records. Identify SANs inserts to discover subdomains. Search through CT logs for past cert issuances. Use Shodan to discover IoT and similar devices. Use the harvester and Recon Ng to perform OSINT techniques from the command line. Use Multigo to visualize connections between OSINT objects. Use FOCA to extract metadata from downloadable files. Okay. Here's like an activity that they have that they kind of go over, kind of running OSINT against the target. Yeah, so this is some of these things that you can kind of go through kind of as lab work later, but it's just basically you're doing OSINT on a target domain. You want your team to perform targeting on GCPG. You'll begin with a less intrusive approach. Public resources can reveal useful info on a target. You'll use Recon Ng to perform passive recon. It's kind of interesting in OSCP, they actually have you target like your company just as far as collecting information, doing passive recons, see what you can actually collect on your company. So that's kind of a good little thing to do on your own, just kind of seeing what you can find out there with some of these tools, see what kind of email addresses and stuff that you can come up with, any kind of information that's being leaked. Findings, analysis, and weaponization. So weaponization is a process of turning passive recon results into directions or launch points for active recon and preliminary attacks. Ensure more overt phases are influenced by previous actions. Prevents them from being isolated, missing out on key info, can enhance their effectiveness. Analyze findings for content or interest, depends on context, like test scope, target businesses. Consider findings in bigger picture, not a vacuum. Combine in and consider how it pertains to the environment. Separate signal from noise. Determine what results are useful and what should be discarded. Failure may impede the test and lead your weaponization astray. Content interests, so some of the things you want is IP addresses, subdomains, external and third-party domains and websites, key personnel information, contact info, info that facilitates social engineering tests, info that reveals specific technologies. Kind of like mentioned earlier, like Netcraft, you could get information on servers. IP addresses and subdomains. IP addresses gained from OSINT will usually be public ranges. So if you're doing like an external penetration test and it's like black box, they want you to see what you can collect the test against, then you would use those IPs that you were able to collect during your recon. You can leverage public IP addresses through active scanning. So here when you start leveraging that, you're getting into less passive and more active recon. So that way you can, when you run your scans on those public addresses, you can find out what ports are open on those systems and the OS information, like web server information and kind of applications running that as well. Most hosts accessible through public addresses are meant to be public facing, although sometimes there can be stuff on there that's not meant to, that just got missed and not secured properly.
Development servers.
What's that?
I see development servers hanging out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting too, because a lot of colleges have public IPs. Like here, the workstations all have public IPs. And then I knew someone that was doing like a pen test for a large college. A lot of the students there, they would, in some of these development classes, they would get like their own domains or IP addresses to set up web servers. And so all these web servers and websites were built internally at that college, and it was externally facing, and they never did take them down after the fact. So on this pen test, they had to go there and try to locate these websites, and then that way they could get them shut down, find out what's out there, and what's vulnerable. But, you know, if you got stuff out there like that, someone can come along and hack that and get into, you know, servers that contain student information. And so it says, yeah, it doesn't include subdomain or domain controls or other private resources. Typically don't, but some things are exposed and you can get to some of those externally. Also leverage public IP addresses as entry points into private networks. And OSINT may also expose private IP addresses. Sometimes there's like some devices, like some of the big IP devices will actually reveal internal IP addresses. So there's like a known vulnerability with that is supposed to be natted, but it exposes the internal IP address. So an attacker can find out what, and if they're publicly routed, then not using NAT, then it makes it a little easier for them to get inside. Let's see, leak network documents, publish a site. That's one way that you can get the internal IP addresses, help you focus later scans on specific addresses. Now, those are internal and you can't get to them, then this is information that you can use once you're performing an internal test. You can focus on subdomains, example, intranet.example.tld. Should be further investigation. Also tie IP addresses to subdomains. Subdomains, a lot of times if you're doing bug bounties, that's sometimes a good way to find systems that may be vulnerable, because a lot of times the subdomains aren't as secure as the main domains. External third parties perform OSINT on partner, contractor, other related sites, can expand knowledge on target organizations. How to proceed will depend on scope, actionable info. You'll be prohibited from taking next steps against the third party, not necessarily in scope as they have not agreed to take part. Even if authorized, the info may not be actionable. Many other types of third-party sites. Any site not owned by the target organization. This is one of the things too, when you're doing your OSINT and you're looking at your targets, you want to make sure that you're clear on what targets belong to that company, because you don't want to go hacking another company's website. Glassdoor, employee reviews, review companies and management. Reviews may reveal info about people, processes, technology. Organization has no control over the site, and yet it can still aid a pen test. And people, you can leverage people. Info depends on several factors: role they play in an organization, day-to-day responsibilities, teams and departments they work with, business identification details like email addresses, phone numbers, technical aptitude, mindsets, and perspectives. People continued example scenarios, gather information on an executive from an organization's website. So you can find out who the CEO is or one of the C-level executives to target with your test. Prepare info to use spearfishing attack. Discover social media profiles with personal data on financial employees. Use this in your password cracking list. Also, like you also can target people that internally that work in IT as well. Discover disgruntled Facebook posts about network admins, neglected employees. Focus your test on finding weaknesses. You can find other sites too where people complain about companies. I remember used to, like on one of the Yahoo's business sites, this one company I worked for, it might have been the company a friend was working for, but you can see where people that are complaining about the company and they were revealing a lot of information that they shouldn't. I think it was like like Yahoo Business or something, one of their investment sites, but people on there were revealing information on it they really shouldn't have been revealing to the public. So amazing some of the information you can get from sites that employees that are publicly posting. Yeah, some people that may be useful or do not work for organization, family, friends, customers, etc. Social engineering, the practice of deceiving people into giving away access to unauthorized parties, enabling those parties to compromise sensitive assets. Targets unaware of the trick commonly used by attackers because of how effective it can be. People naturally trust others, and this is true. The pen test I did also included physical and social engineering. And when we were trying to get into the building, the guy I was working with was waiting for me in a break room, and I was going to wait for him to let me back in. I had to go to the restroom, and I was worried I'd get back and have a hard time getting in the break room. He didn't even have to even help me because a lady was leaving the break room, and I was like from here to the wall, and she said, "Are you coming in here?" I said, "Yes." So she waited for me to get there, let me in, and so it was amazing how easy people trust. I mean, it's kind of sad to try to change people when they're trusting and friendly like that, but it was amazing how easy we roam around the office. No one questioned us. We went into like a small little office, one of those little office spaces that are typically set up for small meetings or when people come in from other offices, for the day that they can kind of set up. And we were in one of those offices. I was there for 7.5 hours. No one said anything, and they didn't know I was there until like 15 hours after I'd left.
Did you have some kind of fake badge dangling?
No, I didn't have to use a badge. The guy I was going in there with, he had like his work badge turned around backwards and like a gym badge. So that way it had the RFID on it. No one saw a picture. So if he went up the door, he could hold up against the door and it would beep but it's not the right badge. So people think he's trying to get in, something's wrong with his badge, and let him in. But a lot of people are really good social engineers. This is not one area that I have done a lot in, but some people go in as far as cloning badges. They'll go and look online, or they'll find some coffee shop or something near a restaurant and like take pictures of someone's badge. So they can take a picture of it. Maybe they can, take it on their computer, take a picture of themselves and copy and paste it. Or maybe someone's got badges online. Someone's on social media posts a picture and they can zoom in or just make a badge look like their company badge. And like Tinker was talking about going out and buying uniforms. A lot of people go out and get uniforms that look like uniforms of that company, or they'll find some kind of uniform that looks like a utility worker. You could come in and say you work for, AT&T, you're here to work on their phone system or something. And so there's a lot of tricks people use and to get in. That also, sometimes people dress in a suit. You go someplace and the dress code is like business casual. Someone comes in a 3-piece suit and a tie, looks important. Sometimes people are going to be scared not to let them in, and because they don't want to get fired or something. So that will get over on people. I mean, for us, when we went in there, we were just dressed button-down shirts and khakis and got in pretty easy. So, but I'm assuming if I went in dressed like I am dressed today, a t-shirt and jeans, then it might have been a little more difficult. So sometimes you have to dress the part to get in. And then you can go as far as cloning the badges. Like Tinker was talking about, a lot of people get the badge cloners and clone people's badges. And those can be cloned from a pretty close proximity. So you can be on an elevator with that device in your bag and scan someone's badge and make your own and get in. But a lot of cases, you just need to tailgate.
Inside that building?
What's that?
You could open doors inside that building?
You could with cloning a badge. We didn't do that. We didn't have that type of setup with us. We didn't have to. We just tailgated. In a lot of cases, that's pretty easy just to tailgate. Some companies will put devices in place to mitigate that. Like they'll have, I've done tests for companies where they have like not really a turnstile, or kind of a more modern turnstile type of setup. You walk up, you badge in, they'll only let one person in at a time. And if you were to go around, try to go over, an alarm would be set off. So you have to be real careful going through those. Those are pretty nice setups. But then like this building, it was a multi-tenant unit building. So I think they were a little more lax on security because so many people going in and out. It would be hard to control who's coming in. So the control was the badge readers on the door. So that's how you got in or tailgate. And that was the only controls in there. So that, and it's interesting, a lot of times people will carry like cups of coffee with them. Their hands are low, they're trying to get in, people let them in the door. Actually, one of the people from DHA, or used to go to DHA, but she relocated, is really good at social engineering. I've asked her about possibly doing a talk for class since she's out of state, and we have streaming capabilities. I just got to get that scheduled. So she's offered to do a talk for us, but she's got a prosthetic belly that makes her look pregnant. So she would go to different offices and have her hands loaded down. And of course, you know, people are going to let her in the door. And so that, you know, different things people can use to work on people's emotions and sympathies to let you in. Okay. Social engineering targets many different people, job roles, financial personnel are common targets, executives, managers also common targets. Test scope may prohibit social engineering, raises ethical issues. Yeah, not all pen tests include social engineering. Sometimes that's specifically called out, like the test we did, social engineering and physical was in, but like cases they don't allow that. Sometimes that's like a separate pen test. Used to, we would, in my last job consulting, we would go in and make a recommendation. If you saw something that people were letting people in easily and you weren't necessarily trying to do a physical test and you saw how easy it is to get in, sometimes that would be something you recommend be tested. Because at the end of the day, the social engineering aspect from physical security or just social engineering, a lot of times that's the weakest link, you know, people, either them letting you in the door or them plugging something in a computer, say, hey, I'm here late for a meeting. I'm meeting with the CEO. Can you print this document out for me? You know, I didn't have time to print it or whatever. And so there's all sorts of ways that humans can be hacked because systems become more secure. So you're relying on other devices and people to get past those. Yeah, one of the first on-site pen tests I did was for a school in Pennsylvania, and one of the guys was doing a physical test. And he was able to get in, and he had pictures of himself like in the server room, and took pictures of himself. He's in the teacher's lounge, so he got in the teacher's lounge and was hanging out there. That's really scary to think someone could get into a public school that easy. Technologies, OSINT tools can reveal technologies and organizations built with. Technology can prepare you to exploit specific scenarios. A web server running Apache may prompt you to focus on Linux as a target, although it can be run on Windows too. Some technologies indicate a reliance on a particular vendor. Public resources use that vendor. Why it's not private? Why is it not private resources? Well, web server running on IIS might indicate presence of an AD environment. Leveraging technology info requires research into vulnerabilities. Vendors often issue alerts for security issues with products used to hone your scans later. Technology can also indicate strong defenses. Up-to-date technology may prompt you to rule it out as a target or vector. Focus instead on other less well-protected technologies. Preparation for next steps. Record your findings and conclusions in a document. Refer back to this document whenever necessary. Choose whichever document format is you're most comfortable with. Example, spreadsheets with rows for each finding, columns for each next step. Make sure to define what next steps mean in your test. Could dive straight into active recon like port scanning and enumeration. Could decide to start social engineering instead. Could also decide to conduct physical pen tests. Direction you take depends on the test scope, your findings, your own personal assessment of the situation. And here's like an example of the way they're keeping track of their findings in the spreadsheet. And the more organized and the better notes you keep, the better off you are, because sometimes you may see something, and if you don't write it down, you may forget about it, not use it later. And then as you find certain things, kind of make notes of how you could leverage it. Maybe you saw some other things and you do an analysis on the different findings and you can piece those together possibly for another type of attack, some areas that you need to test further. So that's very important to keep good notes. And that's pretty much any part of the pen test. You always want to keep notes and steps of how you did certain things. And let's see, guidelines for preparing background findings for next steps. Clearly determine what next steps mean to you. Analyze findings to determine how to weaponize them in the future. Consider findings with a bigger picture, not in a vacuum. discard irrelevant findings and focus on actionable findings, determine how public IP addresses map to public resources you can target, consider how public IP addresses might be useful as an entry point, which subdomains may be worthy of targeting. Leverage info from third-party sites and organize an organization and its people. Consider how people info can shape later testing. Leverage people info in conducting social engineering. Use gathering technology info to identify potential vulnerabilities. Consider that a target organization might rely on specific technology vendor. Record findings and next steps in a document for easy reference. And so here they're kind of going over a scenario in this. You scanned a real domain in the previous activity. Now you can review your findings and see what you can leverage. So here you've done the passive recon on this public domain. You've given the report. Now you can analyze the findings to determine your next steps. And I believe some of these items are contained in some of the downloads that you got with your book. They have some different example documents in there for these things. So you can see the spreadsheet that they created with the findings. Okay. And here's the Netcraft site that I was mentioning. Okay. So here you can look up different, let's see what we can. See if we can find anything on Dallas Community College.
Target.com.
Let's see here. Sometimes if they're doing their job right, it's not showing up on there. So see if we can find a domain that. Okay. Okay, there we go. I don't see anything related to Richland. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Not having much luck with this. Normally, I'm doing something wrong, or they're doing a better job with
Are you looking
hiding
for
their stuff.
the results? You just go down a little bit. Looking for the results. Sorry. The one on the right.
On the right.
What's this site running? Just above your mouse.
Oh, okay.
A little further. One more up.
Okay, gotcha. I see. Thank you.
We know what that will be.
Yeah, so you can see.
Actually, you're wrong.
Yeah, look at the OS. See
Wow.
Linux?
That's amazing.
Yep. So yeah, you
I
can see
didn't
something.
know that was
So yeah, so this information there, like you can see the operating system versions. We used to go in there just to see some of the up times, because you go in there and you look at some Linux servers that have been up for like years. I mean, it's back before people were really patching like they should. Okay, here's the site report. So you can go and look at the site report, get a little more information. So this is stuff's important if you're doing a pen test. So you're able to find like the IP address on it, the IPv6 address, reverse DNS, the name server that's being hosted on. So you're targeting a company, then you can actually find some of their DNS servers. So that's some of the information that you can find with that. Okay. So yeah, here you got like, if you go to the Explorer, you can see like webcams that they have listed, default passwords. So you can go here and look at some of the different sites that have their default passwords. A lot of cases, it'll tell you what the default passwords are. And if you click on this little link right here, it'll open up to that router. Here you got listed some of the different operating system, top operating systems, different versions of Linux, but yeah. Found, for instance, like a DSL router. So yeah, if you look up for a certain company, you can go through there and find like their headers and stuff.
So probably you have to create a login, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I went ahead and logged in. That's why I went off screen, so that way, if in case I accidentally type my password in the wrong place, people wouldn't see it. So that one's kind of fun to play around. Like once you catch like the Black Friday sales and stuff, like I said, you can get like lifetime access for like $5.
How much is it usually?
I'm not really sure. Not really sure what the. Yeah, here's another site that's pretty similar. So here you can see it pulls up the server information. See it's running Apache. You can see that running also port 80 on just plain HTTP and the 443 for HTTPS. You can see what type of TLS encryption it's using, cyber strengths. So we're using TLS 1.2. That's very good.
That is.
Yeah.
And then you put in an IPv4 and it dumps.
Yeah, you can put in, I started out with just a domain name.
Okay.
Yeah, I started out with like the Dallas Community College domain name and it pulled up different servers.
So
So
you had an IP address, you could put it in.
yeah, you could go by IP address and it pull.
This is good for me. We do this like every day.
Yeah.
We use a tool called Comodo.
Okay. Okay.
It's really nice, but this is nice too.
Hmm,
I would
okay.
like to have two ways to check.
Yeah, I haven't used that, but there was mention, I think maybe that in the book.
Yeah, it's quite good. It's pretty, so we take screenshots and we
Mhm.
mail it to the victims. You know, we say, dude, TLS 1.0, and show them the screenshot. And they can't find it.
Yeah. There's a lot of things like network tools. Let me see if this site's still up. Yeah, these sites are pretty cool too, because you can do like whois searches, you can do trace routes and different things with. And here, the nice thing is it's coming from the internet, not your IP address. So this is more passive. So in some cases, some of these type of commands, if you did that from your own system, it wouldn't be passive, it'd be active. But going through here, we used to use this a lot I used to work on the server team and I administered DNS. So we'd use this for doing our DNS troubleshooting. So I don't know if this is good. So you can go there, you can look up the DNS information for like Microsoft. So you can see the different A records and their name servers. Here's their mail, their MX record for the email. There's a lot of different tools out there similar to this.
What was your input for that website?
Network-tools.
No, I mean,
Oh,
do you give an IP address?
Yeah, you can give a domain name. I just use Microsoft.com, but you can use an IP address or a domain name.
Okay.
So this is a really good tool for troubleshooting. But yeah, you can get DNS information. You know, you're doing recon on a particular site. Maybe you can't find this information like on Netcraft, then you can use like network tools. Like I said, the nice thing about this is you're not calling attention to yourself. It's still kind of not really technically passive, but passive as far as it's not linked to you. They're not. You're using it from this site. And
Data dump compared to what you get out of dig.
I'm really not sure how it compares.
It seems similar, but it's just a lot more.
Yeah. The nice thing about this is you can go through and do things without having to know all the the proper syntax to different things, and then different types of troubleshooting here. I mean, this is good for troubleshooting. Let's see, email checker. This is really handy for testing your email. You're having email problems, you can test it. But at any rate, main purpose is just to find information for your recon. Someone said, I guess Shodan is normally $50, I guess they said online.
For what time period?
I'm not sure what it is, the access.
So if you had a favorite Metasploit, exploit, you know, whatever, you could use Shodan to find every machine in the universe.
Yeah, you can go find
Yeah,
things
switch.
as long as it's externally facing. Yeah, you can. Yeah.
That's incredible for 50 bucks.
And then just searching on certain things. I mean, you may not be able to, if you search for that module, you wouldn't find it, but if you search for certain things in there, you know, that are associated with it. So if you found like was looking at the vulnerability, you could search, and that's like even some type of vulnerabilities that may be accessible from a URL, you know, because like there was like a photo gallery vulnerability or exploit for like an online photo gallery, and a lot of sites used it. You could actually go and Shodan and search and find, you know, those directories associated with it and use that vulnerability against it.
And Dave will bring up the address of the server and the header.
Yep.
Output.
But yeah, this is, like I said, you go there, Shodan, you can see all the webcams and see Explorer. So yeah, a lot of times when some vulnerabilities come out, you'll see that listed on there where people have been searching for it. Okay.
So what makes Shodan more powerful than, say, Google?
Then what? Then Google?
I mean, using Google.
I think it just makes it more simplified. And then you're basically able to go back and find particular searches other people have done. That's really the main difference. It's just a little easier to use. You know, like for instance, too, like industrial control systems. This is like a big thing now, so you can see
So if you want to destroy
wind turbines and
fuses, that's how you start.
no results found.
Or just get the cover of stuff that in the government. They can't use it.
It's a pay-as-you-go site.
Yeah, it's like I'm not sure what the normal price is. I know for like I think someone was saying on the chat was saying $50, but let's see, freelancer. See, I'm not sure exactly what the difference between this is, because $59 a month. This because I know like their spec for lifetime access. So I don't know if it's limited to what you can do compared to these. I would almost think so. I don't know if you're in there, we'll go that this census site is kind of a similar, not really exactly like Shodan, but this one's a good one for looking up information. We're to do a search on dCCC.d.eu and able to pull up some different servers with that.
Is it as good as Shodan?
It's a little more different. It's probably doesn't do a lot of the things that Shodan does. But if you're just needing like server information, yeah. I think you may be able to pay for, I think you may be able to get access to it. I'm not sure what the difference is if you pay for access.
So Shodan is $59 a month for freelancer, $300 for small business, or $90 for corporate. That's what the website.
Yeah, here's another site. You can do certificate searches.
Pretty good. Notice that web address. I think we just type in Domino.com thing. I've got a bookmark set, so I can forgot. But it doesn't look like that.
But yeah. So this you can look up the different certs for companies.
Oh, I must be on one of these tabs where I always put in the IP address.
It's amazing what information you can get out there.
What is that?
CRT.sh, and it does a search on certificates, like people's SSL. There, yeah. It's like we dig down to this one, you can see the timestamp. Let's see. Yeah, you can see how long the certificate. This one expires next month. Doing pen testing, you have to deal more with testing encryptions and certs and all that stuff more than you like. I mean, because you go through and you run a NESA scan and you have to go through and validate certificates and all that stuff. So man, that is the worst. It's not difficult, but it's like one of the most boring parts of the job. So you can see that some of the different servers that use this cert too, the different subdomains.
Those are server names?
These are like the domain names that this cert uses. So yeah, you can see the subdomains that are using this cert.
So then possibly you could have an email like mary@library.bccd.
Yeah, you could possibly go through that. Let's see if this has, because yeah, this doesn't have like contact information. Yeah, we'll see. But you got your subdomains in there, which can give you, so if you're looking for targets to attack, then you can find some of the subdomains, but you could do some of the stuff with some of the different like NS lookups and some of the other DNS tools. Okay. Okay. Since we missed our normal lecture on Tuesday, do you guys want to go ahead and go on to the next chapter? This one's got 42 slides, so that way we don't get behind on the lectures, and this one's on social engineering, so it fits in pretty well as a next step.
I'm down for it.
Okay, we'll go ahead and continue on then. This one, fortunately, is not as long as some of the other ones, so let's see. Sure. Okay. So performing non-technical tests, perform social engineering tests, which we kind of covered some of that in some of the OSINT, and perform physical security tests on facilities. Basic components of social engineering attacks, target evaluation, assess targets, I can't say that. Accessibility, yeah. Susceptibility, thank you. To attack, I promise I hadn't had anything to drink. To attack and to attack their weaknesses of cyber, attack their awareness of cybersecurity, pretexting, communicate in a lie or incomplete truth to get a victim to believe a falsehood, physiologically manipulate someone, exploit human decision-making and cognitive basis to craft a more effective attack, building relationships, get victim more friendly and comfortable to enhance trust level, motivation, motivate target to take action. Motivation techniques. So the first one's authority. People tend to obey authority figures. Example, attacker posing as a police officer. It's like we mentioned a while ago too. Someone goes in dressed in a suit, someone may think they're the CEO or something, so usually they don't really question them. Scarcity. People attach value to uncommon objects and ideas. Example, attacker rewarding victim with unique collectible. urgency. People attach value to temporary objects slash ideas. Example, attacker giving a limited time offer. This is trying to prompt the person into getting the action, perform the action they want done quicker. Social proof, people tend to want to fit in and conform with a group. Example, attacker installs fake AV, victim does the same to appear competent. Likeliness, people are more trusting of those like them. Example, attacker tries to be charming and persuasive to specific people. Fear, people who do irrational things to purge themselves of fear. Attacker convincing a victim they will lose money if they don't comply.
So it's just essentially sales with a different.
Yeah. It's actually, when you think about it, it's almost like being a con artist. You're trying to sales. Social engineering, so you think about it, sales is like social engineering. You know, you talk to people, you try, like they mentioned, the urgency, you know, the scarcity. This is the last one we got. You know, you have to, if you want it, you have to buy it tonight. So they use a lot of those concepts. And there's some books out there too. Chris Hagnaggy's got a really good book out, and part of the things they talk in there is the psychology behind social engineering. It's pretty interesting, and the people that really get good at it are able to read people and really able to, like, you know, hide their emotions and feelings around people to convince them. So I mean, they're one part con artist and one part actor. But then, like, Chris Hagnaggy, Hagnaggy, let me see, I got the book here on my computer. I can share that real quick. But that's a really good one. Okay, come back here. But yeah, a lot of these things, just the okay. See, because also this was made a pretty good. It's a pretty good audio book. I guess I don't have all the books on here. Let's see. Yeah, he goes in there really into the psychological aspect of it. Yep, that's it. Someone posted it up. Chris Hagnaggy. It's H-A. And the book is Social Engineering. That sounds right. Let me see. I got the book on the Audible version. Yeah, Social Engineering.
Human hacking.
Social Engineering, the Art of Human Hacking. That's the book. So that was pretty good. They get into a lot of the psychology of it. So yeah, a lot of these things, you know, fear, you know, that, like we mentioned earlier, you know, someone is afraid they're going to get fired or something. So someone, you know, if you don't do this, if you don't install this, you know, a lot of the times social engineers or even more the malicious actors may try to direct someone to the website saying, you know, the antivirus didn't install properly. You need to go to this site and download this, or you know, you need to go log into this system to download this file or whatever, and people go in and enter credentials and get that. So a lot of times fear of being fired, that's a motivating technique. And phishing, a tactic which attacker attempts to obtain sensitive information from a user posing as a trustworthy figure through email. Also more generally referred to as a trick over electronic communications, one of the most common effective social engineering tactics. Easy to distribute, impersonal, can leverage technical tricks like from headers, spoofing from headers. Example, attacker sends email claiming to be from victim's bank. Contents tells victim to send their password so account can be reset if a victim does not comply with the account. So this is where they're playing on the fear and urgency. Leverages urgency and fear as motivators. Victim receives email with spoofed headers and will think it's legitimate, complies with the fraudulent request. So a lot of this stuff is looking, past the, it's interesting where all you see these type of things taking place, just like even like voicemails or people calling you directly, trying to get you to say, yeah, this is the IRS and you haven't, you have back taxes. If you don't pay this, you're going to be arrested or whatever. And trying to scare people into it, which, for anyone's, to share with your family or anyone like that to help them protect themselves, is IRS is never going to call you. Only way they're going to communicate is through mail. They're not going to call you or send you an email.
Sometimes nowadays I get text messages with a link in them.
Yeah.
And it's crap.
Yeah. I've had people try to social engineer me, or malicious actors contact me on site. I was doing a pen test one time, and I kind of wished I was at home because I had to be really calm and keep my composure in the office. But the guy was he said, we're getting emails. Your email has been compromised. You need to go to this site or whatever so we can help you or whatever. And he kept pulling us off. And I told him, asked him, I said, you know what the OSCP is? So if someone's calling you trying to help you, this like help desk, they're most likely not going to know what that is. And he said, yeah. And I said, I do what you're doing for a living, but it's legal what we do. I mean, what you're doing is illegal. You're trying to, scam someone. You shouldn't be doing that or whatever. And he kept stuck to the script. And it really surprised me. He got mad and hung up on me, and I was actually able to call him back. And he wasn't like masking his phone number, because a lot of times you can mask phone numbers where people can't call you back. And he was still there, but man, he kept his act up, his pretext. He was sticking to it. Even though you told him I caught you, he
Even
wasn't
after you
giving up.
called him back, he's still stuck to the script?
Yep.
Jesus.
Yeah, they were trying to say, and I asked him, because they tell you, oh, yeah, your email's been compromised. You ask him, what's my email address? What email address is it coming from? They can't tell you. But a lot of times, it's funny on some of those phishing emails you get nowadays that it's too easy to tell because of the grammar, or they really don't go to a good job with some of the graphics, putting together the email. I get some emails sometimes, it's supposed to be from Citibank, and there's some odd characters in the URL. They may put like a dash or something, and I don't know if it's something lost in translation, but you think if these people were trying to scam people, you go on Fiverr or something and have someone write a document up for you, or some of these Elance or something, find someone that's a really good writer and make it look more like the emails. Some of those things surprise me. I think really probably the pen testers that are phishing someone probably have more realistic looking emails than some of the actual criminals do. And here's an example of a phishing email. A lot of times people will get what they call doppelganger email addresses or domain names, and they'll take something that looks similar to your company's domain. Maybe they'll switch out like a character, add an extra character if it's a really long domain. Sometimes you could use like a #1 instead of an L or something, make it look close to that. So when they email you or send you that link, it looks like a legitimate URL. But as far as doing those tests, you kind of want to get those ahead of time, because sometimes some email systems will detect this is a new domain name, and they'll kind of throws up a red flag because it protects against all those things. So some of the defense mechanisms are getting better. It's interesting. Sometimes you look at some of the phishing emails and the whole message is like just an image, but they've got it. So if you click on that, then it's linked to another site. So they're trying to mask it with like an image.
And there was something recently where there was a version of Bitly that had the eye as some weird character in another language, looked almost exactly like an eye.
Yeah. That's easy on us, especially stuff like that. It's pretty easy to and then if you got like a long enough, you make domain names long enough or email addresses long enough, then sometimes people don't see it in the address bar and maybe more likely to click on it. Types of phishing, smishing, phishing done over SMS. User may ignore unknown text more readily than email. Vishing, this is over over a phone, telephone or voice over IP. In farming, phishing that entices users through a spoofed website. Victim interacts with the website to provide info. This is pretty popular in pen testing, the farming. Some of the stuff, I don't even know if that was an actual term when I first did it. Spearfishing, this is more targeted. This is usually what pen testers do. They usually target like a small number of people opposed to like a few single, smaller group of individuals. Like more of the bigger, broader base is more what your malicious attacker is going to do. They're going to send out, thousands of emails, and then someone's bound to click or reply back to it. Whaling, spearfishing that targets wealthy and powerful people, high risk, high reward. Impersonation, the act of pretending to be someone that you're not. Many social engineers use attacks to use impersonation, relies on target not being able to identify attacker. Example, attacker pretends to be a help desk worker. This is very popular. Calls people to ask for their password. Target may be less suspicious if they don't know who works on the help desk. May be more effective in face-to-face interactions. People want to avoid appearing rude or dismissive. May be less likely to question an imposter. Relies on target not knowing what a real person looks like. I was doing a phishing campaign one time actually my part of the job was to lure the people to the website because we told them that some patches didn't get updated overnight. Some systems got missed some critical patches that you need to go log into this system. So they would go in and put in their Active Directory credentials and try to capture them. And having a technical background helps out with this stuff because my years in IT, when I contacted the guy, he was having some kind of Outlook Exchange problem. And he was asking me about it, and I dealt with it. So I was actually able to help him with the problem. So I was able to pull off the act of being on the help desk. So sometimes knowing that area is pretty good. So you don't want to go posing as the help desk if you don't know certain items or what you're trying to angle you're trying to take on the phishing. The process of collecting elicitation, the process of collecting or acquiring data from human beings, different than information gathering about human beings. People may themselves provide key insights. Certain knowledge may not be available this way. An approach used in social engineering attacks. Specific types, requests, interrogation, surveys, and observation. And that book I was just telling you about, if you got a long commute, it's good to get the audio version of that because I used to listen to it when I got it, I was listening to it on the plane between customer flights. Elicitation continued, but it's a pretty interesting book. BEC often uses elicitation. Attackers impersonate executives, sends email to financial personnel requesting transfer of funds. This is what Tinker was talking about with his examples last night. Personnel approves transfer. You can see here that the sample email, this is playing into the urgency part.
I'm surprised accountants would fall for that.
Yeah, I am too.
All the time. I watch some finance.
Really?
Yeah, they have company policies that have specific rules now, but they've all been hit once or twice. Because you wouldn't believe the number of executives that's how they wanted to do. Right.
You're right. I wouldn't believe that.
Yeah, they just want to type an email and not be bothered to approve it or sign some paperwork or something like that. So, for small dollars under 100,000, definitely are. For large companies.
That's pretty interesting. But like I said, a lot of people are just trying to be nice, so they're not wanting to get in trouble or they're not wanting to make someone else's life difficult. Hoaxes, an element of social engineering in which the attacker presents a fictitious situation as real, similar to a scam, but not always about the money. Examples, antivirus warnings that themselves are malware, emails that request advanced payment and access to larger sums of money in the future, just like the Nigerian prince that sends you the email. I've inherited $2 million, but I need your help. If you transfer $3,000 to me when I get the money, I'll split it with you. So I know we've all seen those. Emails that say account has been flagged for suspicious activity. Blog posts offering false advice that leads to damage. The bad thing, a lot of stuff is you take some of the, some of the elderly that get preyed on in this stuff that see these things that aren't tech savvy. And yep, here's an example here, and it happens to be a Nigerian prince. Baiting, a social engineering attack where an attacker leaves physical media in a location where someone else might pick it up and use it. So it's like someone could take a malicious USB drive and leave it laying on the ground. Before in past, people used to use CDs, but you don't see CDs and DVDs used as much. It's kind of interesting. Once you start learning about this stuff, you don't really look at things the same way anymore. I was going to Minneapolis, St. Paul for a pen test, and I was waiting for my baggage near the baggage claim. And I was looking down the ground. There was a USB sitting there, and it was probably innocent, but I saw it. I thought, wonder what they got in there, what they're trying to do. But the interesting thing is, we at the DC 214 meeting a month or so back, one of the guys there was speaking on his experience with social engineering and this type of thing, baiting. He was saying that he got better success than if he labeled it as, put the company logo on there or something. They say a lot of times people follow the rules. They'll go turn it in to security or something. But they say if you put it like a purse or a bag or something, make it look like a personal item, then a lot of times people are less likely to turn it in because it's a personal item. They're not really going to worry about getting caught. If it's like a company owned device or something to do with the company information, they're not wanting to get fired, so they turn it in. And they said usually when people turn in the USBs, he can tell it's coming from like a sandbox location. But when people plug in that find personal devices, it's actually they plugged it into their computer. So he'll go to like a thrift shop and buy like a bag, a purse or something, and put some miscellaneous stuff in there, put a USB drive in there. And he said that he's got almost 100% success rate from doing that. Yes.
How could you tell if this comes from a sandbox?
I am not really sure what. Yeah. Yeah, this is like.
It must be possible because some viruses don't activate when they know they're in sandbox because they don't want you to study.
Yeah, but phishing works well. That's true. But how do they know that's something? Is this like pretty much an actual
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I have to find out how they did, but this guy's really sharp.
Maybe it's knocking heads with the DMR tools, the virtual drivers. That's the only difference.
I don't know. They must do something code wise or something to be able to tell, or just I don't know.
Like every person, every to see one.
Well, they can't ping something on the internet. They can't get-
But a VM can ping and crossing that.
Yeah, it's like just another
And the next one here we're covering is URL hijacking, a social engineering attack in which an attacker exploits the typing mistakes used when someone attempts to navigate a website. So this is kind of like some of the doppelganger sites. And they're saying typo squatting, where someone takes something that's like, you look at CompTIA, they just rearrange the T and the P. So that way, sometimes there's sites where you're accidentally type something in wrong when you're going to it. So that's where people get these domains and squat on them. If they're really wanting to look at leveraging this in the future, then, they would set these up ahead of time. So the domain's been there a little bit of time and not viewed as, being too new to trust. Browsers don't know and use it by mistake. Users sent to a website. Attacker already registered domain. Typo squatted domain may be overtly malicious or looks similar to the real thing. You could do something like clickjacking, where you could build that other site and have an iframe where it overlays, and so someone goes in, it looks like that site, and they're actually putting it into a dialog box, login box on your malicious server and collecting your information. So that's how they could take advantage of that information. Let's see, also encompasses wrong top level domain. So they use like .gov, obfuscated domains like login.com, .tia. So this is like they got tia.org, but then they added subdomains to make it look like CompTIA. Different word form. They add the CompTIA. Companies expend effort to combat this. Some URLs fall through the cracks. So a lot of times companies will buy those URLs to prevent people from, or domain names to prevent people from using it for stuff like this. Spam and spim. Spam and an attack where the user's inbox is flooded with unsolicited messages, advertisements promoting get-rich schemes, etc. We all know what spam is. Spam is over instant messenger, so spamming over instant messenger. Shoulder surfing. Let's see, social engineering, we all know what that is when you're on your system and someone's like looking over your shoulder, trying to see what you're typing in or try to get any kind of information you can see. But a lot of times they can watch and see what password you're typing in. So that's a form of social engineering attack. You could also do that like on a phone. If someone's typing in their password on a phone, you could do that as well. Tailgating, we talked about this a while ago. The attacker just kind of slips in through someone else in the door, someone that's got access, just following closely. A lot of times people let them in pretty easily. Piggybacking, similar to tailgating, but the target knows someone is following them. Might know attacker personally and be a accomplice, okay, or might be ignorant or the attack. This is kind of interesting because I've never really heard the difference. I've always heard piggybacking, tailgating used the same. Or might be, for example, does not know attacker was terminated. So yeah, someone's disgruntled, they got fired, and they just kind of walk in with someone they out there under break, and they just kind of walk in behind them to get in. More likely that target doesn't know the attacker, lets them in out of common courtesy, may want to avoid confrontation. Less effective when organization is small and all employees know each other well. Building access is strongly controlled. So it's like your tailgating protections. Guidelines for performing social engineering tests. Understanding basic components of social engineering. Leverage motivation techniques. Launch a phishing attack to entice targets to leak sensitive info. Use media other than just email for phishing. Create a convincing forgery of a popular website. Capture credentials through login forms on forged websites. Leverage gathered data about people to spearfish specific targets. Consider targeting high-level personnel in phishing. Use impersonation to make the attack seem more authentic. Use elicitation to get targets to reveal info. Leverage hoaxes to make attacks more convincing. Drop a USB drive loaded with malware in a parking lot. Determine how users fall victim to mistyped URLs. Leverage spam and techniques and phishing attacks. See how easy it is to observe employees without their knowledge. Consider how environment might make tailgating, piggybacking less effective. Baiting users with USB thumb drives. Passive recon didn't reveal much about the internal network. This is kind of, you need to find a way in. This is kind of one of their scenarios. You bait the users with a USB thumb drive, dropped in the parking lot. USB drives are loaded with malware. A curious employee will hopefully pick up one and plug into their computer. This will hopefully give you a way into the network.
We had a policeman do that at Blue Cross Blue Shield, and he said there was about a 13% success rate.
Oh, really? That's interesting. You can imagine back when they first started doing that, how it was probably a higher success rate, but people are starting to catch on those things, and people are doing security awareness to protect against that. Harvesting credentials through phishing. You want to expand your social engineering campaign. Employees have fallen victim to phishing in the past. You set up a fake Google sign-in page. You entice users you profile in a passive recon to follow the link to this page. The phishing message will indicate urgency and demand action to be taken. Users will hopefully enter their credentials into fake sign-in form. You may be able to use these captured credentials elsewhere. This is where you may want to make it look like an Active Directory login or something like that. Or some Office 365 that would normally use AD credentials to get people to put in their Active Directory credentials. Physical security controls you may be up against. Door, hardware locks, surveillance cameras, security guards, lighting that makes nighttime intruders visible, fences, gates, and other barriers, man traps, alarms, and motion detectors, motion sensors. Fence jumping, the act of surmounting the height of a physical barrier in order to gain access. So some people that do pen testing are not in the best of shape, so this may not work for most of them. You may have to have a younger person do this, jumping walls or climbing fences. Taller fences cannot be jumped, so you can use a ladder. Barbed wire, razor wire is even stronger. Anti-fence jumping measures situated top of the fence will cause serious injury if you attempt to go over it. Openings can be made with the right tools. Dumpster diving, this is pretty popular for recon. People going through the dumpster trying to get, a lot of times people throw out items without shredding, so they're able to find account information, bank account information, and sensitive information by the stuff being disposed of. Lock picking and bypassing, which we'll be doing some of that pretty soon. Have someone come in to teach lock picking. Yes.
On the dumpster diving.
Yeah.
Is that legal, or is that something you would need to get permission to do in the public agreement?
Yeah, usually in your statement of work or whatever, that would be, you could list that in there. That would be a good idea, especially because, I don't know, some people may see it as trespassing or something, I would guess, but it's pretty popular. You missed the slide because Tinker had a picture of someone that had been dumpster diving in the back of a car with a bunch of bags of stuff. So yeah, people do that. That's one thing I want to do. Some of those trash, I mean, it's like a regular trash can too. So people are getting in those trash cans, and sometimes they're pretty nasty.
CVS Pharmacy was busted for throwing white papers with patients' data, just type their, their identity, their insurance payment.
Yeah.
They were really busted by the feds. So then I was an auditor there, and I was scheduled to dumpster dive. And before it happened, they canceled it. They called me from the headquarters in Rhode Island and said, "No way, don't do that." And I said, "Why?" He said, "They throw away dirty needles."
Oh crap! Yeah, you don't want to do that.
So I said, "Oh."
And lock picking and bypassing, organizations will lock doors, cabinets, safes, devices, etc. And they usually say people pick locks. It's usually internal because you won't call as much attention internally as it would be outside. Locks can cut your physical testing short if you can't find a way around them. Types of locks influence how you get in. Key locks are very common, and you require the correct key to open. Uses pen tumblers, interchange cores at water springs, wafer springs. It's kind of interesting too, because there's some people that will break in without, they'll either have like master keys, and then the guy that was talking about hiding the USB in a personal item was saying how a lot of times when he goes in places, he'll use like something to pry the door, because you can pry so far and unlock the door. And there's a lot of physical devices that look like an ice pick that's like L-shaped and then it's bent. And a lot of doors, you can just stick it to the other side and pull to unlock the door. So there's a lot of things that you can do without even getting to the actual picking locks. I got a good video that I have to share with you guys. Deviant Ullum, he's a physical pen tester, and I'll share the video, but he does one showing different techniques on using, without even getting to the lock picks, showing how use that little ice pick looking device, different things to get in the door without even picking the locks. Just his idea is get in the easiest way possible. If you have to, then you can pick the locks. But that's a really good video. I'll send it out or post it up on eCampus or both, so you guys can check that out. Bolt cutters, hacksaws may destroy poorly made locks. So if you're doing this professionally, you don't want to go tear up, people's doors and stuff. And this is an external door. If you go in and break a lock or something, they can't secure the facility, then that's not good. You can also try picking a lock. The skill required practice and right tools. Vendors sell lock picking kits using pin tumbler locks. Not very effective against high security locks.
How common is that these days?
I hear a lot of people using it on site. I mean, I like to try to get into file cabinets or certain doors that may be locked in non-normal, without like the card access keys. So some people will I've heard a lot of, I personally haven't really been in a situation where I've done that, but I know several people that do, and Mobius that's coming to teach lock picking has taught a lot of pen testers that, because some of them will use it on site. It just depends on if the scope is more like a red team or physical security assessment, then they'll do it. So I mean, it's pretty popular. I don't know what the percentage is, but
So it's a trap that's truly needed?
yes, yeah. It depends on what you're doing. If you're doing more red teaming kind of stuff, more physical, yeah. And then there's some people that just specialize in physical pen tests. Okay. Basic lock picking process. Use pick to raise lower pins until flush with shear line. Use torsion wrench on lock plug to hold pins in place. Repeat the remaining pins. Use torsion wrench to turn plug. Disengage the lock. Not all locks use keys. Keyless locks combination access card biometric. Keyless locks must either be destroyed or bypassed. Simple combination locks can be brute forced. Access card biometric locks can be difficult to bypass. May need to think outside the box to bypass the key lock. What if the lock is only active during off hours? Try again during another time. RFID. So RFID is used a lot for most commonly indoors these days. Many different applications, and physical security use with ID badges. RFID tag is attached to the badge, includes antenna microchip. Lock containing RFID readers sends signals to surrounding area. Tag's antenna picks up signal, and microchip returns a signal to reader. Reader received signal and opens locks if lock is authenticated. And you see some really highly secure places that they'll use, like your card access badge, and then maybe some biometric like a thumbprint or even a pen, because I used to do testing for this really secure facility. And since I was a contractor, each day I would get a new 4-digit pin to get in that room. And so like the full-time employees or long-term employees would have their RFID badge, and they'd use like a thumbprint to get in. But instead of going through that process for every consultant that comes in, they gave us like a 4-digit pin. So that you can't just find someone's badge and go get in. So they have an extra layer of security. It's interesting in that video too, they have some interesting things that prevent people from getting indoors. They were showing how there's a device that you can put around a doorknob, and it's really made to protect the doorknobs, because some facilities, factories, or maybe shipping areas of a company, sometimes dollies or carts can come up against the door and it can knock the door handle off if you're not careful. They've got some protective devices that they put on the doors that are actually made to protect the door, but they say those are good for preventing someone to use some of those other measures, like sticking something in to grab the door handle. So that video is pretty good on showing how to protect against that stuff too. See, RFID badges don't need to be waved in front of a reader. Can be inside a bag or someone else's shirt. RFID authentication, yeah, because a lot of times you see people with their wallet, have their badge in there, they have their back pocket and turn around facing the card reader. RFID authentication systems can support granular access, personal issued unique badges. Badge is a key that mitigates lock picking, but you can clone the badges still. That's where you have to kind of layer things, not just the badge, but like the biometric or pins. Badge cloning, the act of copying authentication data from RFID badge. Badge's microchip to another badge, enables attacker to obtain credentials without stealing a badge. Can be done through RFID, handheld RFID writers, like the Proxmark device, like Tinkerhead, inexpensive, easy to use. Hold a badge to the writer, press the copy button, hold up a blank badge, then write the copy. Can also be done through RFID receivers concealed in bags, fleet several feet away, most effective against 125 kilohertz. EM4100 protocol does not support encryption, transmits data to any nearby receiver. I was thinking recently this would be an interesting attack if someone was able to compromise one of those card readers and put like a somehow or another build a card reading device in there where you could clone badges as people come up. If there was some way to overlay that or somehow wire that device where you could clone badges as people come up, and then later on in the day you could have like maybe Bluetooth and pull the information from that. So it'd be
Like a shim
yeah,
behind the original, the real one.
yeah, or either somehow
Sure,
yeah.
either way, if they can do it at the gas station and grab your credit card. Sure.
Yeah, there's got to be some way, especially because you got that reader, so you could use it wired into the system. And I don't know, it'd be interesting if anyone would be surprised if someone's done that. If I thought of it, I'm sure someone else has. Your badge technology uses higher frequency, faster data rate, supports encryption, and only broadcasts certain attributes. Encryption-based badges still can be cloned, requires Android devices with near-field communication, and a cloning app comes with default keys issued by manufacturer. If organization doesn't change keys, badges can be cloned. What is pretty interesting, this guy came to DC214 one time that he's actually a lock installer. He does overhead doors and some of the gates at some of the apartment complexes, and he's talking about how some of those have default codes in them, or how some people get the devices that will randomly change codes until it finds the right code for that system and lets them in. Motion detection bypassing. Motion detection systems detect movement to identify unauthorized physical access. Sensors placed at key entrance and exits. Most detect changes to infrared spectrum. Some detect human-based emissions. Some detect blocking patterns. Some detect deviations from baseline. Sensors will trigger alarms or fail-safes. Simple bypassing involves finding blind spots, identify what zones are covered by sensors, stay inside these zones. Not all feasible if zones are too wide or sensors hard to find. Some of the sensors they have on doors, I've heard of people taking fly swatters. And it's like it's one of these sensors that's like right in front of the door, and someone would take a fly swatter and bend it, stick it in the door, and then just turn it in front of that sensor to. Yeah, I was at Verizon when I first started pen testing. We went through training. That's one of the things they demonstrated. Sometimes people will take like compressed air or something, or some kind of can that emits like a fog or something, and go to some of those doors and spray that in there, and it'll break the contact.
DEFCON 22 video, and they showed somebody that was big time vapor.
Yeah.
And he blew
Oh, yeah.
his vape behind the sensor, and it unlocked. Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Pretty fascinating too.
Yeah, it's amazing some of the stuff people come up with. Yeah. And you know, they put that out there, and some of that stuff may stay unbreached for years, and finally someone does something like that.
There's another one for elevators. He did a whole session on elevators. It's like an hour and a half. Fascinating.
That's,
I had no idea.
that may be
Different types of elevators.
that may be Deviant Ullum, because I know he does something on elevators too. But that's like his hacker handle. He's on Twitter. He's got pretty interesting Twitter to follow. Okay, other motion detector by try placing material over sensor, cardboard, styrofoam, glass. Try placing material over own body if it can't reach sensor. Not always effective, requires moving slowly in large blocking object. Blocking tactics won't fool all sensors. Try focusing infrared light as a sensor. Stops human-based infrared and doesn't rely on blocking. Not effective against baseline comparing sensors. Guidelines for performing physical security system or for physical security tests on facilities. Identify physical security controls in place at a large target organization. Look for low fences or entrances in other restricted areas. Consider using a ladder to scale a taller fence. Consider the danger of scaling a fence with barbed or razor wire. Look for dumpsters that may contain sensitive materials. Calendars with passwords. Sensitive business documents, storage devices, computing equipment. Practice lock picking. Find other ways around key locks. Use a handheld RFID reader to clone badges. Conceal cloning tool in a bag to read data from several feet away. Use an Android device app with an app to clone RFID badges that use default keys. Identify area a motion detection, motion sensor covers. Large motion sensor blind spots to move around the building. Consider using a piece of material for blocking motion. The motion sensor, focus infrared light on sensor to fool it. Let's see, activity performing physical test on facilities. You want to apply, okay, this is another one of scenarios. You want to apply your passive recon results to the test the security. You found the company's main office location and other info. You start the test by surveilling and gaining access to the building. Here they go back to the information that you've gathered. Okay. And so they got some questions here. What concerns you when it comes to conducting social engineering tests?
It would bother me to lie to people even implicitly.
That's a good one. That's kind of a deterrent against a lot of people. For a lot of people, that's like Wirefall at DHA. He used to do a lot of social engineering, and he just finally got to where he'd been doing this so long, and he just really felt bad that he was getting good at deceiving people. So he quit doing social engineering. So that, yeah, that bothers that can be a good factor. And then be able to, pull it off, to have them be calm enough to pull off these things. Because, sometimes you're in those situations, you're pretty nervous and it can be easy to give away. Anyone else have any ideas? Thoughts on that?
Gray areas to social engineering, such as threats.
Yeah.
If you're using blackmail techniques and things like that, is that still acceptable or not?
Yeah, one of the things you got to consider too is if you're doing, a physical test. The first opportunity I had to do a physical test, they wanted me to do a test in Mexico. It was right across the border. And one of the things that got me out of the test was they said that part of the agreement for the statement of work is whoever does this needs to know Spanish. So that got me out real quick. But I didn't want to go to another country where I don't know the language, and they're notorious of, locking people up and throwing away the key. So I didn't want to go over there. And I thought, and also the company sent you with a bodyguard. And that scared me even more. I thought, if I'm going to go over there with the armed bodyguard, I'm even more scared. Because what happens after they shoot him, then I'm next. So yeah, you have to, the safety part of it, you have to worry about. What kinds of physical security have you encountered at places you've worked? And let's see, have you worked highly secure organizations? Or are you more familiar with organizations that have little or no security? How might relative security of these organizations impact pen tests? So what kind of physical security is anyone?
I work at Target, and they technically have a lock on the door that we go back to get our stuff in. It's never worked.
Yeah.
You walk right through. We've had guests walk through there before, and the room where our equipment actually is supposed to be closed and locked. There was something in the way because the bosses don't want to come up every 5 minutes to get something out.
See a lot of those retail environments too, they use those little PIN codes too. So it's like 4 digits. So sometimes they use like 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
There was a guy
That
that,
is the store number.
yeah, that's a good one. It was interesting. We had heard a guy do a, yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, I had a guy do a,
I said it's never worked.
heard a presentation of a guy one time that was testing some casinos, and he went up to one of the doors and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. And so as he was in this one area, had like a USB drive plugged in with Kali Linux sitting there on this computer. Another one of the security people is in there. Someone works for the casinos on another computer. And he was saying, I can't believe how lax the security is. The code of this room is 1, 2, 3, 4. And he said, that's nothing. The room where they keep all the money is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he offered the information without even asking. So has anyone worked any high security facilities?
I'd say Citibank is pretty
Yeah.
hardcore. They have a man trap, and you've got to have the RFID badge thing, and the computer keeps track of which building you're inside or outside. So you couldn't do weird things like, you know, enter another building if you haven't exited the one you're in right now.
Oh, okay. That's good.
What?
If somebody comes to
Well, that would
RFID
be a mess really quick, because, you know, I'm inside at my desk, and they try to enter my building, it wouldn't work. Or if they tried to enter my building, it wouldn't work. See?
Yeah,
And if you get crossed up with it, you can only go to the front door and talk to the man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
one of the things I've always done is I go out to remote facilities and always show up at the door and knock
Mhm.
and say, IT to fix the network. And I've never been badged. Because they pull you in and then they say, and I've got a printer problem and I've got this other problem. And they're perfectly happy to let you in the network.
Yeah. Interesting. Anyone else?
My son did that. I've never been in a high security facility, but I was fascinated by my son's interaction. He's an IT person also, and he worked over at Lockheed for like a year, and I was just enamored with all the stuff that they do to keep the facility safe. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things I thought was outlandish. They do a search on you every day.
Okay.
Contractor, but still, I mean, kind of invasion of privacy or too much, if you want to call it that. But I guess if you sign up for the job, that's your thing.
Yeah.
Well, if you have a clearance, then you've given away all those rights to apply for a clearance. So that's part of the job.
Yeah, I did a pen test for Ross department stores one time, their distribution centers. And that's the way that since they have merchandise in that building, people are packing merchandise up and to send out to the stores. And that when you went through there every day, people were searched. Well, not physically searched, but they would, you'd have to empty your pockets and they could visibly see if you had anything. They'd check your bags and that kind of stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I was in IT whenever I was in the military, and I had a top secret clearance, but that was 20 plus years ago. So I know the world has changed, but wow.
That's the end of the lectures. Anyone have any questions or anything they want to discuss? Or anything you want to share? Well, if you don't, that concludes class for the evening. So if anyone,
Hey, Phil,
yes,
what's the word on labs?
they should hopefully be up soon. I turned in the list of students, so they got to get those accounts created. There were some minor tweaks they had to do on the VMs for the labs, because before the labs, they had the firewalls not configured for the vulnerable apps. So it's like you were there, the students would have to actually go in, they could get into the Windows devices and disable the firewall and do their testing, but the Linux, I don't think we had passwords for, so it was a huge pain. So I made sure that they're going through and loosening up the firewall rules so they work as they're supposed to.
Okay.
So that should be pretty soon. I'll
Okay.
keep bugging them every day until they get it done. But right now, so far, we're the stuff we're covering, it's not really needed yet, but I want to get it ready as soon as possible. So even if we're not to certain sections, you can play around the labs and play around with the tools and scan things.
Okay.
So I'll let you all know, because they'll send me back an email and let me know what the passwords and stuff are, and I'll send out your credentials.
Cool.
And it'd probably be something like you're not supposed to use, like winter 2019, probably the password.
Okay.
You sit there and tell students about that, and then all of a sudden they get their emails, their credentials, and they're using those weak passwords like that.
Someone asked, what is homework?
I just follow what's in the contained in the syllabus. There's that little table with the assignments. So this was like, so basically I review what you covered in your reading assignment. So those sections of the book, read that and any kind of associated activities with those. So far, I don't think it's really gonna be much technical stuff right now. But so what we do is you'll read those assignments and go through the chapters in the book, and then we come into class, we'll review it. So the goal of this class, we want to get through all the reading in the book at least halfway through. And so once we get down halfway through the class, then it's all lab then. But we'll be doing labs before that, but just kind of let you see how things are going to flow. We'll get
Sounds
done
good.
with all the reading assignments halfway through, and that way it gives half a semester just to bang away at scanning. We did one pen test last semester. It's like a final assignment, and this semester I intend to do like 3 or 4 pen tests in class.
Awesome. Good deal.
Anyone else have any questions?